හරිම සුමුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9. This Monday, the 23rd of October 2023. National Consumer Price Index. Sri Lanka's consumer price inflation eases in September. Appointments. President makes new appointments in 3 ministerial positions. Proposal. Restructuring proposal of the CEB to be presented to the Cabinet next week, says Minister of Power and Energy. Identity. DNA samples to be collected to confirm the identity of the missing Sri Lankan national in Israel-Hamas tension.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Derana. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome. You're joining us tonight on your prime time English news service. I'm Derana. We take you to your top story. We've been discussing the energy tariffs revision as well as the restructuring of the CEB. Power and Energy Minister Kanchana Wijesekara confirmed that today that the restructuring program of the Ceylon Electricity Board will be presented to the Cabinet next week. He further added that the proposal to revise electricity tariffs once every quarter is expected to be submitted following the Attorney General's approval.
දැන් සමාජයේ මතයක් යනවා දැන් අධික වැසි තත්වයක් ඇති වෙලා තියෙන නිසා ගාස්තු සංශෝධනයක් අවශ්‍යද ඉදිරි මාස දෙකේ මේක පියව ගන්න පුළුවන් කමක් නැද්ද කියන එක. නමුත් අපේ ප්‍රධාන ජලාශ තිබෙන සීමාවල අපි වෙනදට දකින වර්ෂාපතනය තාම දැකලා නැහැ. අපි අද වෙන විට අපේ සම්පූර්ණ ජලාශවල තියෙන ධාරිතාවෙන් අපිට භාවිතා කරන්න පුළුවන් 65.81යි. ඒකම සංසන්දනය කරොත් එහෙම 2022 ඔක්තෝබර් මාසේ 22 වෙන විට ඒ වෙලාවේ ජලාශවල මට්ටම 84.41යි. දැන් පෙබරවාරි මාසේ වැඩි කිරීමක් කරා ගාස්තු ක්‍රමය ගේන්න වියදම් නිරූපණය වෙන ක්‍රමයකට ගේන්න. නමුත් ජුලි මාසේ 14කින් විදුලි බිල ගාස්තුව අඩු කරා. සිදු නොකළ යුතු දෙයක් 3කින් අඩු කරන්න කියලා විදුලි බල මණ්ඩලය ඉල්ලුවා. මේක 14කින් අඩු වුණා. ඒ 11ක වැඩි ප්‍රමාණයකින් අඩු වීම කියන එක තමයි 18ක් වශයෙන් දැන් මේ මාස දෙකකදී එකතු කරගන්න සිදු වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒ වගේම විදුලි බල මණ්ඩලයේ ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගත කිරීමේ කාර්යයේදී අද වෙනට තියෙන තත්ත්වය තමයි අද නීතිපති කෙටුම්පත් කාර්යාලයට ඒක ලබා දීලා තියෙනවා. නීතිපති කෙටුම්පත් කාර්යාලය ඒක සකස් කරලා නීතිපතිවරයාට යොමු කරලා තියෙනවා පහුගිය අඟහරුවාදා. නීතිපතිවරයා මට දැනුවත් කරා ගිය සිකුරාදා මේ සතිය තුල ඒ අවශ්‍ය නිෂ්කාශනය ලබා දීම සඳහා කටයුතු කරනවා කියන එක ඊළමන සතිය අපි කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයට ඒ ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගත කිරීමේ වැඩපිළිවෙල ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
CEB එක 3% අඩු කරන්න කියන්නේ ඒගොල්ලෝගේ පුරෝකතන සාමාන්‍යයෙන් වැඩියෙන් නිවැරදි වගේ තත්ත්වයක් තියෙන්නේ. මෙහෙම ඩිස්පියුට් නැති වෙන්න ක්‍රමයක් තියෙනවද අනාගතයේදී කරන්න මොකද?
මහජන උපයෝගිතා කොමිසම සහ විදුලි බල මණ්ඩලය එකට වැඩ කළ යුතුව තිබෙනවා. දෙක නිකන් යුද හමුදාව සහ LTT එක වගේ වැඩ කරොත් ඒක කරන්න බෑ. මම එක පැත්තෙන් පිළිගන්නවා විදුලි බල මණ්ඩලෙත් ලබා දෙන දත්ත තොරතුරු නිවැරදිද කියන එක පිළිබඳව යම් අවස්ථාවලදී අපිටත් සැකයන් තියෙනවා. නමුත් අපිට යන්න වෙලා තියෙන්නේ අමාත්‍යවරයා හැටියට මට දත්ත හදන්න බෑනේ. අපි දැන් සාකච්ඡා කරමින් යනවා ඇත්තටම මේ මාස 6ක් කියන එකත් ටිකක් දුර වැඩිද කියලා. මොකද එකපාරට මාස 5ක අලාභය පියව ගන්න උනොත් එහෙම ඊළඟ මාස 6 ඒ ප්‍රමාණය බර වැඩි. ඒ නිසා අපි යෝජනා කරලා තියෙනවා බලන්න කියලා මේක කාර්තු මට්ටමින් යන්න පුළුවන්ද කියලා. විතර අවුරුද්දට 4 වතාවක් මේක පිළිබඳව තොරතුරු අරගෙන සංශෝධනය කරන්න පුළුවන්ද කියලා. ඒ නිසා ඒක ඉදිරියේදී කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයට අපි ඉදිරිපත් කරනවා.
What was the overall debt of CEB and what is now?
Last year after the revision was done, 2022 accumulated a total loss of 272 billion. January to December 31st of 2022, 272 billion, close to 272.9, 273 billion, and 20 23 losses up to September, cumulative at end of September was 29 billion.
So who is paying that?
So that's why we have to borrow from the banks to pay the finance cost. That's the thing. Now, when you even do a tariff revision, it doesn't give provisions to pay the outstanding amounts. Previous obligations are not accounted in the current tariff methodology. So the CEB has to go for other financial facilities, go to the banks, borrow it, and then pay that.
Isn't this included in a formula?
Yes.
It's included.
No, it's not included in the formula. Whatever additional revenue that we make, we have to go to the banks, forecast the amounts, ability of payback. That's how we have to pay the accumulated losses.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe reshuffled the portfolios of key cabinet ministers earlier today. Accordingly, Minister Dr. Ramesh Pathirana has been appointed as the new Minister of Health. Minister Keheliya Rambukwella will serve in his new appointment as Minister of Environment, while Minister Mahinda Amaravira is appointed as the Minister of Plantation Industries.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe today reshuffled several cabinet positions. Accordingly, Minister Keheliya Rambukwella, who was the Minister of Health, was appointed as the Minister of Environment. Minister Rambukwella was recently accused of importing inferior and substandard medicine into the country following reports of a series of deaths, which were claimed to be due to the administering of some imported vaccines. Accordingly, the opposition brought a motion of no confidence against Minister Rambukwella, but it was defeated by the majority of votes. Following the President's decision to reshuffle the cabinet portfolios, Dr. Ramesh Pathirana, who was previously the Minister of Industry and Plantation, was appointed as the Minister of Health.
සෞඛ්‍ය ශාස්ත්‍රයේ විවිධ ප්‍රශ්න ගණනාවක් පහුගිය කාලය තුල ඇති වුණා. ඊටපු සෞඛ්‍ය ඇමතිවරයා හුඟක් උත්සාහ ගත්ත මේ තත්ත්වය කළමනාකරණය කරන්න. මම හිතන්නේ දේශපාලනිකව මෙහෙයුමක් දියත් වුණා විපක්ෂයේ සානිකුත් කණ්ඩායම් වලින්. ඒ කාරණය කළමනාකරණය කිරීමේදී යම් යම් ප්‍රශ්න ඇති වුණා කියලා තමයි හිතෙන්නේ. ඒ උඩ මෙවැනි තීරණයක් ගත්තා කියලා. සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශයේ බහුතර නිලධාරීන් හරියට වැඩ කරේ නැහැ කියන එක අපිට තේරෙනවා. ඒ වගේ ඔවුන්ගෙන් හොඳ සහයෝගයක් ලැබුණේ නැහැ කියන එකත් අපිට පැහැදිලි. ඒ වගේම රටේ ආර්ථික ප්‍රශ්නෙත් මේකට බලපෑවා.
බාල බෙහෙත් ගෙනීම සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඒකටත් මේ ඇමතුමා සම්බන්ධයි කියලා තමයි මේ චෝදනාව එල්ලුනේ.
හිටපු ඇමතිවරයා ඇමති ධූරයක් දරන්න දක්ෂ කෙනෙක්. ඒකින්ද තමයි මම හිතන්නේ මාරු කිරීමක් කරේ. උන්ට දැන් පරිසර ඇමතිකම ලැබිලා තියෙන්නේ. ඉතින් රමේෂ් පතිරණ මහත්මයා තමයි සෞඛ්‍ය ඇමති වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. මම හිතන්නේ මේ වෙනසත් හොඳයි කියලා. ඒ තුල යම් සාධනීය වැඩ කොටසක් අලුත් ඇමතිවරයාට ඉෂ්ට කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි.
Mahinda Amaravira, who serves as the Minister of Agriculture, was appointed as the Minister of Plantation Industries as well. Meanwhile, State Minister of Finance Ranjit Siambalapitiya was also sworn in before the President as the non-cabinet State Plantation Enterprise Reform Minister in addition to his current portfolio.
අපි මොහොතක් සිටිනවාද සෞඛ්‍ය ක්ෂේත්‍රයේ තියෙන මේ මහා දැවැන්ත අර්බුදය මේවා විසඳෙයි කියලා එක ඇමතිවරයෙක් අස් කළා ඒ වෙනුවට වෙන ඇමතිවරයෙක් පත් කිරීමෙන් මේකට කිසිම විදිය විසඳුමක් ලැබෙයි කියලා මේ රටේ කවුරුවත් විශ්වාස කරනවාද
කේලිය ශ්‍රමුකල ඇමතුමාට එරෙහිව ගෙන විශ්වාසභංග යෝජනාවේදී විශ්වාසභංග යෝජනාවට පක්ෂව අපි ඡන්දය දුන්නා. මොකද පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ සාතිශය බහුතරය විශ්වාසභංග යෝජනාවට එරෙහිව ඡන්දය දීලා ඇමතිවරයා රැක් ගන්න කටයුතු කළා. දැන් ජනාධිපති අද තීරණය කළා තියෙනවා විශ්වාසභංග යෝජනාවේදී ආණ්ඩු පක්ෂය හැසිරුණු ආකාරයේ වැරදි විපක්ෂය හැසිරුණු ආකාරය හරි මේ ඇමතිවරයාට තවදුරටත් මේ අමාත්‍යාංශ කරගෙන යන්න බෑ කියලා විපක්ෂය හරි ආණ්ඩුවේ වැරදි කියලා ජනාධිපතිතුමා තීරණය කිරීම ගැන අපි සතුටු වෙනවා.
යම්කිසි කනස්සල්ලක් තියෙනවා. ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් ජනාධිපතිතුමාව අපි දැනුවත් කරා. මොකද මේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ ජනාධිපතිතුමාට රජය ගෙනියන්න ශක්තිය දෙන්නේ ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොදු ජන පෙරමුණ. ශ්‍රී ලංකා නිදහස් පක්ෂ මන්ත්‍රීවරු 5 දෙනයි ඉන්නේ. නමුත් මෙතනිනුත් ඇමති ධූරයක් ගලවලා ශ්‍රී ලංකා නිදහස් පක්ෂයට දීලා රාජ්‍ය ඇමති ධූරයෙකුත් තවත් අලුතෙන් ශ්‍රී ලංකා නිදහස් පක්ෂයට ලබා දීම සම්බන්ධයෙන් අපි සතුටු වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක වැරදි දෙයක්. ජනාධිපතිතුමා වුණත් වැරදි දෙයක් කරනවා නම් වැරදි. ඒක වැරදි කියලා අපි ප්‍රකාශ කර සිටිනවා.
දැන් මේ ගතපු තීන්දුව නිසා ඔබතුමන්ලා මේ පොදු ජන පෙරමුණ ලබා දෙන සහයෝගයේ වෙනසක් වෙයිද තීරණාත්මක සාධකයක් වෙයිද මේක?
අපි තීරණයක් පක්ෂයක් හැටියට තාම අරන් නැහැ සහයෝගය ලබා නොදෙන්න. අනාගතයේදී පක්ෂයක් හැටියට ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් තීරණයක් ගන්න.
The Sri Lankan Bureau of Foreign Employment requested DNA samples from relatives of the Sri Lankan national reported missing in Israel for identity confirmation. Now, in the meantime, as Israel continues airstrikes on the Gaza Strip, despite objections worldwide, Palestinian authorities confirmed that over 400 people have been killed in airstrikes launched without prior warning within the past 24 hours. Amid the ensuing chaos, 14 trucks carrying humanitarian aid entered the Gaza Strip.
Despite strong objections expressed worldwide, Israel is continuing to carry out airstrikes on the Gaza Strip. Out of 320 airstrikes launched towards the Gaza Strip within the past 24 hours, 25 were targeted civilian areas. Palestinian authorities confirmed that over 400 people were killed in these attacks, which were launched without prior warning. Palestinian media labeled yesterday night as the deadliest night faced by those in Gaza. 30 people were killed in an airstrike on the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza.
تعالي يا حبيبتي تعالي تعالي يا عمو تعالي حبيبتي تعالي تعالي
Israeli airstrikes were launched near the Al-Shifa and Al-Quds hospitals in the Gaza Strip yesterday. Israeli forces again ordered the residents of northern Gaza to move to southern Gaza yesterday. Subsequent to the warning, Israel continued to carry out airstrikes on southern Gaza, making the displaced Palestinians even more helpless. Over the past 17 days, 5,087 people, including 1,900 children, have been killed in attacks launched on Gaza.
وما النصر إلا صبر ساعة.
29 UN staff members are also among those killed in Gaza. With this, the number of deaths on both sides exceeded a tragic 6,000. Another 14 trucks carrying humanitarian aid have entered the Gaza Strip against a backdrop of continuing devastation and violence. UN Humanitarian Affairs Coordinator said that though this is favorable for those in Gaza, the aid provided is not sufficient. Pope Francis, meanwhile, prayed for the people of Gaza. He highlighted that there can never be victory but defeat in war.
Again, my thoughts go to what is.
As per the information given by the IDF, Israeli Defense Forces and the international branch of the Interpol, we requested the spouse of the Mr. Yatawara Bandara, a person who missing during the attack conducted by the Hamas on 7th October 2023. As per the information, the two children, 13 and 9 years old, they have to submit their DNA sample to get the information if there is a such evidence they need. Also, we are waiting the reply from the Hamas group regarding the captured people. Whatever the occasion, we have to use the DNA of those people. Therefore, we advise them to submit the report. They will submit tomorrow. The Ms. Anula Ratnayaka's family already given the DNA sample. I think the report will come tomorrow or day after tomorrow. We can finalize. Her body will hand over tomorrow to the funeral parlor. We are willing to go and check her body tomorrow. There is another good news for the Sri Lankan people who are living here illegally. Around 1,800 Sri Lankan people are living here illegally. We had a meeting with the PIBA. PIBA means the Immigration Authority Director General this afternoon. And during that time, they appreciate our caregivers, how they are working in the critical time in the ongoing war situation. They are working very hard and they are looking after very well their adults, disabled people and the people with special needs. Therefore, they came and appreciated their service to the embassy, and while discussing, I informed them that there are around 1,600 to 1,800 people without visa. Therefore, if they can legalize, they will do their contribution very well on this difficult time. They agree for my proposal and they informed me to submit the list. This afternoon, we disseminate a message among the Sri Lankan community and inform them to come tomorrow morning and day after tomorrow to get those details and finalize their list. People who came without visa, who came for the agriculture work. And after completion of the list, we would like to submit for the PIBA department, and they agreed to submit the visa, I think the long-term visa, and people who have been working here, it's a good relief for them because many people did not return to their home due to illegal stay here more than 7-8 years. Therefore, I think this is a good news for Sri Lankan people as well as the Sri Lankan workers living in Israel this time.
Moving on to other local news here, several areas including the Mathura and Ratnapura districts continue to be severely hampered by the inclement weather. Taking the risk posed by inclement weather into account, the Disaster Management Centre took measures to relocate 119 families in Badula district.
Several areas in the country continue to experience heavy rainfall during the past 24 hours. The highest rainfall of 161.5 millimeters was reported from Mathura. A 19-year-old boy in Kolonna was reported dead after a mound of earth collapsed on his residence last night. The boy, who was buried in the rubble for more than an hour, was already dead when he was rescued and taken to hospital. Subsequently, the Disaster Management Centre confirmed 119 families in the Badula district have been relocated from their houses due to risks posed by inclement weather. The Mathura and Ratnapura districts saw severe damage caused by heavy rainfall during the course of yesterday and today. Traffic on the roads of the Mathura district was disrupted due to flooding. Further, several residences in the district were also inundated. "77 schools in Deniaya were closed today due to unfavourable weather in the region. The Galle district, meanwhile, also reported flooding. Measures have been taken to open 4 sluice gates of the Daduruwa reservoir by 2 feet. Irrigation engineers urged people living on the sides of the reservoir to remain vigilant as the sluice gates will have to be opened in the coming days. The sluice gates of the Chandrika reservoir also opened due to heavy rainfall. Several houses in Ambilipitiya were inundated due to this. The Department of Meteorology, however, says the prevailing inclement weather is expected to subside. Meanwhile, taking the prevailing weather into account, the National Building Research Organisation extended early landslide warnings.
It is observed that the decrease in rainfall in some hilly areas. With that, considering the present condition, the landslide early warning message has been extended as follows from 3 p.m. today. The warning level 2 alert amber warning was issued to Haldumulla and Haputale Divisional Secretary Division Badula District, Katuwana and Walasmulla Divisional Secretary Division Hambantota District, Tihagoda, Pasgoda, Kamburupitiya, Akurassa, Pitabaddara, Kirinda Puhulwella, Mulatiyana, Hakmana, Velipitiya, Kotapala, Mathura Pogravats, Aturliya and Malimbada Divisional Secretary in Mathura District, Alapatha, Ratnapura, Godakavela, Kalavana, Kuruvita, Opanayaka, Kolonna, Aligoda and Veligapola Divisional Secretary in Ratnapura District. Warning level 1 watch yellow warning was issued to Bandaravela, Passara and Ella Divisional Secretary in Badula District, Akmimana, Nagoda, Golpo Gravats, Niagama, Nelua, Baddegama, Tawalama, Imaduwa, Elpitiya, Yakkalamulla, Ambalangoda and Bope, Podara Divisional Secretary Divisions Gold District, Biliath and Okevela Divisional Secretary in Hambantota District, Walallavita and Ingiriya Divisional Secretary in Kaltura District, Tumpane, Pathadumbara, Pasbaya Korle, Harispattuwa, Ududumbara, Udunuwara and Udapalata Divisional Secretary in Kandy District, Rambukkana and Varakapola Divisional Secretary Divisional Gold District, Polgahavela and Ridigama Divisional Secretary in Kurunagala District, Ambagamu Korle and Kotmale Divisional Secretary in Nuwara District, Kiriyalla, Kahavatta, Palmadulla, Imulpe, Balangoda, Nivitigala and Ayagama Divisional Secretary in Ratnapura District.
Sri Lanka's consumer prices eases in September. We'll come back with your details after this short break. Welcome back. We take you to your business segment. The National Consumer Price Index-based headline inflation in Sri Lanka eased further in September to 0.8% from 2.1% recorded in the previous month. The Department of Census and Statistics said that year-on-year inflation of the food group grew to minus 5.25% in September, while year-on-year inflation in the non-food group reduced to minus 5.9%.
The rate of inflation as measured by the National Consumer Price Index on a year-on-year basis reduced to 0.8% in September this year from 2.1% recorded in August. According to the Department of Census and Statistics, year-on-year inflation in the food group increased to -5.2% during September from -5.4% recorded in August, while the non-food group inflation subsided from a rate of 9% in August to 5.9% in September. For the month of August, the contribution to inflation by food commodities on a year-on-year basis was -2.4%. The contribution of non-food items was 3.17%, which is mainly due to increases in value changes in the categories of housing, water, gas, and other fuels, with a contribution of 1.39% and education and apparel 1.5%.
And the Colombo Stock Exchange edged up today following gains in industrials and financials. The CSE All Share Price Index was up 0.1% to close at 10,82.11, while the S&P SL20 was up 0.13% to close at 3,055.80. Sampath Bank and Ceylon Tobacco were the top gainers, adding 1.83 and 3.1% respectively. Trading volumes fell to 3.12 million shares from 36.7 million in the previous session. Equity market turnover grew to 1.06 billion rupees from 910 million rupees in the previous session. The banking sector was the top contributor to market turnover today, followed by diversified sector. Foreign investors, in the meantime, were net sellers, offloading stocks worth 49.3 million rupees, while domestic investors were net buyers, purchasing shares worth 1.01 billion rupees. And now we have Sajani Devapura from Capital Alliance on Markets in View.
The ASPI increased 2.5% last week to 10,850.5 on the back of the IMF reaching a staff-level agreement on the first review of Sri Lanka's extended fund facility arrangement. The Treasury bill issuance held on the 18th of October offered 65 billion rupees worth of securities, of which 56.7 billion rupees were accepted. The rates of all instruments saw a decline, particularly the 3-month Treasury bill, which declined 34 basis points to 16.3%. Global commodities saw an increase last week, with the global prices increasing 2.4% to 1,933 USD and Brent crude oil increasing 1.9% to 92.5 USD due to fears of disruption from the Israel-Gaza conflict.
Let's now take a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. Taking you to your corporate segment, Auto Group International Sri Lanka announced that the company is considering a new factory expansion despite the challenging economic environment in Sri Lanka. Here's a look at this story and more from the corporate world in brief.
Auto Group International Sri Lanka, a fully owned Australian company specialized in the conversion of vehicles from left-hand drive to right-hand drive and re-exporting, is considering a new factory expansion despite the challenging economic environment in Sri Lanka. Auto Group International CEO and co-chairman Rob Hill stated that AGI needs to expand to meet its ever-increasing global demand for vehicles and hopes the new factory will be in Sri Lanka despite the challenging bureaucracy and lack of support often faced as a foreign investor. Lanka Ventures plc, an investment firm, has announced a strategic investment in Gendo Innovations, a biomedical engineering startup based in Sri Lanka. Gendo Innovations has pioneered a revolutionary medicine device designed to advance the early diagnosis of vascular diseases, and this investment is poised to propel its innovation into the global healthcare market. Australia Gateway, an Australian immigration legal advisory in Sri Lanka, conducted a one-day workshop for Sri Lankans on legislation regarding immigration to Australia. Australia Gateway said Australia has a continuing skill migration program for people with technical knowledge and skilled employees to actively contribute to the workforce of the country. According to the Australia Gateway, professions such as engineering, IT, chefs, and motor mechanics have higher demand in comparison to other occupations.
Now, global oil prices slipped today as investors continue to focus on the situation in the Middle East while diplomatic efforts are intensifying in an attempt to contain the conflict between Israel and the Hamas. The contracts rose by more than 1% last week for a second consecutive week on fears of potential supply disruption if the Israel-Hamas war grows into wider conflict in the Middle East, the world's largest oil supplying region.
Brent crude futures fell 24 cents or 0.26% to $91.92 a barrel. US West Texas Intermediate crude futures were down 36 cents or 0.41% at $87.72 a barrel. Both benchmarks traded over $1 a barrel, lower than their previous settlement price. Oil market analysts said there is some relief in the oil market that Israel is holding off a planned ground incursion of northern Gaza to negotiate a release of hostages, which opened up a window of diplomacy. US President Joe Biden, who visited Israel last week, had calls on Sunday with the leaders of Canada, France, Britain, Germany and Italy after speaking with Israeli Prime Minister and Pope Francis. Leaders of France and the Netherlands will visit Israel this week. The risk of reduced oil supply in the event of escalation in the Middle East could have been calmed by the US move last week to suspend sanctions on OPEC member Venezuela after a Venezuelan government deal with the opposition. Meanwhile, Norway's crude production fell to 1.64 million barrels per day in September, down from 1.79 million barrels per day in August and below forecasts of 1.73 million barrels per day.
You can catch the full story on our YouTube page, AdaDerana. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time. Good night.